A smear campaign, when someone takes it upon themselves to ruin the reputation of another person through lies, omissions, exaggerations. Smear campaigns happen every day, both at the micro level, such as someone trying to push you out of a friend group because they don't like you, or a family member trying to turn all your other family members against you, and at the macro level, where a celebrity hires a predatory PR firm to ruin the reputation of another celebrity who crossed them, a politician who spreads lies and propaganda about his political opponent. At the macro level, it's regular citizens who get involved against their will in the beef between powerful individuals. So most of us have either witnessed, if not experienced, a smear campaign at some point in our lives. But one thing that can really help us understand smear campaigns from a sort of emotionally detached lens is to look at one that happened at a very different point in time, so that the next time a smear campaign shows up on our doorstep, we're going to know exactly what's going on. In today's video, I'm going to tell you the story of how the writer Edgar Allan Poe was the victim of a smear campaign back in 1849. Not very surprisingly, by a fellow author with whom he had bad blood. And not just that, but I'm also going to break down why people launch smear campaigns and why they do it against certain people, so that by the end of this, I hope that you will become bulletproof against smear campaigns. Let's get started. Also, reminder guys, I do have a second channel dedicated to all things books called Book and Hearth. A lot of people don't know about it. I also considered posting this video on that channel, but I wanted to make sure that this topic got the coverage that it deserved. So please follow me on there if you're interested in books, romanticizing life, romanticizing the seasons, all that good stuff. All right, let's talk about Edgar Allan Poe. Edgar Allan Poe was an American poet and author. He wrote beautiful Gothic masterpieces. Now, I don't know about you, but I remember when I read The Raven in high school, I was told that Poe was a very unstable figure. Until very recently, when I picked up an anthology of his short stories, I envisioned him as this morbid, depraved, alcoholic lunatic. And to be fair, Poe was not exactly a beacon of propriety. He did marry his 13-year-old cousin. Yeah, when he was 27 years old, by the way. He was pro-slavery, he had a gambling problem, he occasionally had an unhealthy relationship with alcohol, partly due to the fact that he had like a very low tolerance. But the image I had of him as some like drunken madman who was obsessed with dead people was not exactly correct. As it turns out, there's a reason why so many of us have a mistaken view of Edgar Allan Poe. It's because a literary nemesis of his launched a smear campaign on him after he had died. Poe had a long-lasting rivalry with author Rufus Wilmot Griswold. Griswold published anthologies of poets, and Poe was included in one of them, but one time Poe criticized some of the other poets who had been included in the anthology, and that really angered Griswold. Plus, the two of them were also in a love triangle at one point with another woman poet, so that didn't help either. And when Poe suddenly died, Griswold seized the opportunity. He wrote a scathing obituary for Poe under the pseudonym Ludwig. Then he claimed to be Poe's chosen literary executor in order to write a biography for him, which was filled with lies, exaggerations, and errors, now discredited by scholars. He exaggerated the extent of Poe's alcoholism, he lied about him being insane, he character assassinated him as morally corrupt. Here's a little bit about the person we're talking about, by the way. Griswold was described by his peers as having an abrasive character. He was known for his savagery and vindictiveness. He basically abandoned his first wife and family for a while. He estranged from his second wife because she couldn't have sex or something. He was known as erratic, dogmatic, pretentious, and vindictive. People repeatedly called him devious, two-faced, constitutionally incapable of speaking the truth, even people who were his friends, and he was ultimately accused of trying to take revenge on the dead. Now, the ironic thing is, what is Griswold known for today? Griswold is largely remembered for his smear campaign against Edgar Allan Poe rather than for his anthologies or his writing. He tried to smear the name of someone who couldn't defend himself, but it was ultimately his own reputation that he ruined. There's an anonymous review of one of Griswold's anthologies that was published in 1843 that's believed to have been written by Poe, and it reads the following. What will be Griswold's fate? Forgotten save only by those whom he has injured and insulted, he will sink into oblivion without leaving a landmark to tell that he once existed, or if he is spoken of hereafter, he will be quoted as the unfaithful servant who abused his trust. Well, there's a self-fulfilling prophecy if I've ever seen one. But let's talk about smear campaigns more broadly and what we can learn from this particular smear campaign. You might be thinking, but Anna, how can I deal with someone lying on my name? Well, I can tell you for me, whenever someone's talking shit about me, I sleep like a baby, and part of that is because of today's sponsor, Somnipods. Somnipods are an earbud created by Fitnexa that specifically is designed to work for side sleepers. My husband snores, even though he has literally had a septoplasty to fix his deviated septum. He wears a nose strip, mouth guard, mouth tape. Despite all that, he still snores. And it actually bothers me more than our child screaming. I don't know how that's possible. So for the sake of my sanity, I've been wearing earplugs at night for years at this point. But the truth is, they're really terrible for your ears. Some days when I wake up after using them, I literally feel a dull pain on the inside of my ears. You're not supposed to use them every day. You're certainly not supposed to reuse them. Plus, I am a side sleeper, so a lot of times I literally just have one earplug in of the ear that's exposed. That's why I was really excited to try Somnipods. Somnipods have a low profile shape so that it reduces some of the pressure associated with lying down on a pillow. Not only are they really great for side sleepers and anyone trying to reduce noise, anyone who sleeps with a snorer, but they can also play relaxing audio as you fall asleep, which obviously like regular earplugs cannot do. And what I really like about the audios they offer is that sometimes when my mind is racing at night and I just can't turn off my brain, playing some like white noise or relaxing sounds can actually make it easier to fall asleep. And although the Somnipods do a great job of drowning out my husband's snoring, check out the link below to give Somnipods a try. Fitnexa automatically applies a $10 discount if you do. Thank you so much to Fitnexa for sponsoring this video and for saving my ears. Okay, back to the video. The first takeaway is that smear campaigns are usually launched by a rival. I'm always stunned by how many smear campaigns against authors in particular are launched by other authors. Like, I don't know if you guys have heard about the situation with the author Sarah Mughal Rana, who was ruthlessly review bombed over the course of years with people accusing her of improper behavior despite lack of evidence, to the point where she's been forming a legal case against her harasser from what it sounds like, and people suspect that it's another author behind these review bombs. But this isn't specific to only authors. It's reflective of how, in any field, smear campaigns are meant to harm rivals. The people who launch them, for whatever reason, see the other person as someone they must take down if they are to succeed. Sometimes it's a literal rival, like someone who's dating the same person as you, but oftentimes the rivalry is one-sided, where it's entirely concocted in the aggressor's head, and the person on the receiving end of the smear campaign is like, what is your problem with me? Like, dude, like, I have no issue with you. Why do you for some reason have this like one-sided beef with me? Oftentimes it's someone who is convinced that they cannot be in the same system as you because your being there takes away from their resources. Often it's just someone highly narcissistic, because narcissists tend to see life as a very competitive zero-sum game rather than something that everyone can cooperate and win from. But in some situations, it might be that they feel threatened by you because you genuinely have something that they don't, and their envy sends them into a toxic spiral. Something else that we can learn from the situation is it's often projection. You know, something that I've learned in the past couple years is that the more outlandish someone's accusation is, the more likely it is to be a confession. I'm thinking about one specific situation. Someone was telling me about a mutual acquaintance and something that they were going through. And out of nowhere, they just like put out this most outlandish accusation that I felt some type of way about that person that I absolutely did not feel. And at the time, I was so hurt by it and I was so confused. I was like, why would they say that I feel this way about this person? Is that how I've been behaving? Is this how I do actually feel and I'm just not aware of it? Until I talked about it in therapy. And then I couldn't believe I didn't see this from the beginning, but my therapist helped me recognize this person was accusing me of exactly the same thing that they were doing. What they were accusing me of feeling towards this acquaintance was exactly how they were behaving towards that acquaintance. And since then, I've been just a lot more mindful anytime there's a very outlandish accusation of pressing pause and asking myself, hold on, where is this coming from? Because this feels like it's coming really out of nowhere. It feels like it might be coming from the other person more than it's coming from me. Now listen, we all have blind spots. And sometimes we might have a defensive reaction to something because the other person's accusation genuinely has struck a nerve. But if you're generally a pretty self-aware person and you're open to feedback, it's gonna go a little something like this. The other person makes an outlandish accusation against your character. Your knee-jerk reaction might be, what? Of course not. But then you start to doubt yourself and you're wondering if maybe what they're saying is true. This is not a step that someone who's not self-aware is gonna get to, by the way. And then you really think about it a little further. You get feedback from other people and you start to realize, no, this really isn't me. And then you begin to consider projection. And it is so often the reason behind baseless accusations and character assassinations and smear campaigns. What they are accusing you of, they are guilty of. In the case of Griswold, he character assassinated Poe while everyone in his life consistently described him as having low moral character. Another lesson from the smear campaign is that they are launched when a person is most vulnerable. In the case of Edgar Allan Poe, when he was dead, when he couldn't defend himself. himself anymore. People who launch smear campaigns do not play fair. They play dirty. They stab you in the back. They rely on complete fabrications, and they rely on kicking you when you're down. For most of us, it might not be after death, but rather when you're going through a mental health crisis, a divorce, another stressful life transition, when you're struggling financially, when other things in your life aren't going well. Character assassinators rely on moments of vulnerability to make the punch land harder. They are snakes. They are cowards. They don't play fair. Another takeaway from this smear campaign is that the more smear campaigns take off, the more they are reflective of a systemic sickness. If something is genuinely a smear, meaning it's either partially or entirely untrue, and the system involved in it believes the smear campaign, that's not just a signal that the person doing the smearing is wrong, it's a signal that the entire system is dysfunctional. This is true at the micro level, like a family who turns against an individual because of one person's lies, and it's also true at the macro level, like when someone wins in the court of public opinion by astroturfing the person who accused them of abuse. A system that buys into a smear campaign is sick. They are looking for a scapegoat, likely because something is not working well in that system, and they're seeking catharsis onto an innocent person. They're seeking someone to let out all their resentment onto. So in a smear campaign, it's really important to not just hold accountable the person smearing another individual, but everyone in the system who falls for it. Something else from the situation that we can learn is that smear campaigns are often so effective because they sometimes contain a seed of truth in them. In Poe's case, he did marry his 13-year-old cousin. He was against the emancipation of slaves. He did have a gambling problem. He did have an unhealthy relationship with alcohol. We all have something that can be used against us. No one is perfect, and every single one of us has done bad things at one point or another. But smear campaigns, by definition, are based on exaggerations and lies. Doing something bad gets twisted into this is a bad person. Someone's past behavior gets viewed as a better indicator of their morality than the way they currently live their lives. Their words get twisted against them. Basically, there's like the straw man fallacy happening where the person smearing them is distorting what they actually said into like the most uncharitable version of what they could possibly mean. This is why, to be quite blunt, very stupid people often fall for smear campaigns because they don't have the critical thinking skills to understand when someone is manipulating them by distorting the evidence right in front of their eyes. They aren't able to look at the evidence for themselves and think, oh, this is not at all what you're saying it is. This person is not at all who you're saying they are. They're just sheep looking for a shepherd. And the unfortunate thing about smear campaigns is, again, there's always this tiny seed. We are all imperfect people. Someone can always latch onto something that you have done and twist it and magnify it and launch a smear against you, which means that we are all very vulnerable to smear campaigns. And when we participate in smear campaigns and we believe them against other people, we think we're so safe because we're the ones doing the judging. But rest assured, everybody else who is judging that same person would do the exact same to you if you were in their position. But finally, there is a hopeful silver lining to take away from the situation, which is that ultimately smear campaigns will backfire on those who launch them. Remember, what is Griswold known for today? His legendary writing, his wonderful anthologies? No, he's known for being the man who tried to ruin the reputation of a rival author, while Edgar Allan Poe is known for his writing. Sometimes it takes time for a smear campaign to backfire on the person who launched it. Sometimes a very long time, sometimes not until both people involved are dead. Like, we can now recognize the smear campaigns against female celebrities from the early 2000s, but not enough distance is yet there for us to be objectively real about some of the smear campaigns that took place since 2020. Smear campaigns backfire when someone exposes the truth, like in Griswold's case, people called him out for literally fabricating evidence, or unfortunately, more commonly, when the system has had enough time and space from the smear campaign to assess things more objectively, to not be as heated and emotionally invested in who's the villain and who's the good guy. Like, we can look back at Edgar Allan Poe's smear campaign today and be like, wow, it's so obvious what was happening, but I imagine some people during the actual time period when it happened were very heavily invested in the smear against him being true. Time really does heal a lot. If you're going through a smear campaign right now, I want you to know that. In time, people stop being so heated. They start to look at the evidence with newfound detachment and a address it more objectively. They start to realize that the person who was pointing the finger this whole time was actually the one they should have been worried about. And when that happens, justice takes care of itself. The person who smeared your name is exposed for what they really are. Not because you had to launch a smear campaign back against them, but because of their own actions. If even Edgar Allan Poe, who was dead at the time and couldn't defend himself, was vindicated, you will one day too. Even the most awful, successful smear campaigns in history, there have always been a faction of people who recognized in the moment what was happening and said, no, this isn't right. I need to stand up for this person because the lies being spread on their name are just not matching up with the evidence. Some people have an almost self-sabotaging need to stand up against injustices. And if you're genuinely a victim of a smear campaign, those people are going to find you. On the topic of authors and books, if you are interested in psychological thrillers, psychological horror, make sure to pre-order my upcoming novel, The Splintered Parts. It's also going to be available on Kindle Unlimited. If you want a physical copy, hardcover and paperback will become available on August 14th, the release date. Super excited to share this with you guys. Thank you so much for watching.
Tell me what you